Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Build Member Value, Increase Member Impact webinar. Really excited to present this to you. It's being recorded, and so we will be sending out a link to the video as well as any tools we discuss and the presentation itself. So we'll be sending that out in the next day or two. If anybody has any questions throughout this, hopefully the chat starts working. If you do have any questions, please put it in the chat and we'll try to address it at the end. Oh, I've got it here. Okay, here we go. Oh, the chat's been disabled. Okay, that's why. It wasn't intentional. And if I knew how to fix it, then I would fix it. But that's okay. We can just put it in questions. If you've got any questions, just put them in here and we can work with that. So yeah, if you have any questions, put them in. We'll try to get to them at the end of the webinar. I think we should have some time. I'm going to keep this to under an hour. So I'm thinking probably it'll be about 45 minutes or so. And then we can chat about some questions afterwards. Okay. So my name is Callum Beatty. I am a partner and director of brand strategy with Honest Agency. Honest is a branding agency that works primarily with associations, not-for-profits, NGOs, and the occasional First Nation. Our focus is helping associations and not-for-profits primarily with operating budgets or between $2 and $10 million to clarify their messages, tell their stories, align their teams, and do all this around a unifying brand. So that's really our focus. I have been speaking with a number of association leaders over the last number of months, 6 months or so. And the topic of acquisition and retention constantly comes up. And I don't know if this is a common theme across the majority of associations or whether it's just sort of relegated to a small number of them. But I think the challenge with retention and acquisition is fairly consistent. And so because member value is really tied intrinsically to that, I thought it might be a good idea to put a webinar together and go through some of these issues that maybe some of you are facing. And I'm assuming that if you're here, that maybe that's something that you've been experiencing. So hopefully this is of value to you. By the end of this webinar, we will be able to understand the difference between actual and perceived value from a member perspective. We'll know how to calculate and report on member value, and we'll use some strategies and tactics on how to increase member value as well. The idea here really is to figure out how to increase member value in a way that's practical. So we don't want to necessarily do something that's going to overextend the existing capacity in your association. So we want to make sure that you can execute these things with existing staff. We want to make it personalized. So we want to design around what members actually care about, and we want to make it sustainable. So we don't want to do things that are, just sort of flash in the pan. So we want to do things that are going to strengthen retention, engagement, and long-term growth. And so I'm hoping that this webinar will give you some clarity, it'll give you some tools, and it'll give you the confidence to move into 2026 with a little bit of ammunition and just a little bit of preparedness. So again, in speaking with some of the associations that we've worked with and just some that I've had conversations with, some common themes sort of have come up, and I think that maybe some of these might be relevant to you as well. Some of the things that we've talked about, or maybe that you might be feeling that your members are disengaging a little bit, and we know that engagement really drives everything in an association. Without that engagement, you don't get the same type of retention numbers, and it definitely has an effect on how members perceive that value. Maybe the members say they aren't seeing enough value, or they maybe just can't find it within the association. There could be misalignment between what the association is prioritizing and maybe what your members are looking for. And I think over the last little while, we've really realized that communicating value is just as important as delivering that value. So without communication, people don't know that the value even exists. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the webinar. And also the pressure is rising to perform better, right? The pressure is increasing to provide and prove value. Meanwhile, capacity within associations really is staying more or less the same. It's not like we're hiring a bunch of new people or getting higher budgets. So there are definitely some pressures that associations need to deal with. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the challenge that is fairly common, or challenges, I'm going to say, actually. And we'll just take a look at the member cycle to start with. So, again, my assumption is that if you're here, you might be feeling a bit like you're struggling with acquiring or engaging or retaining members. And so if we look at the member cycle, we know that the lifeblood of any association, and similar with businesses have customers, and associations have members. And so that that member acquisition is really important to continue to move the organization forward. People, naturally leave the organization when they retire or they move or whatever, and you need those people to fill those places and to grow the organization. So acquisition is incredibly important. And then, so you acquire them by providing certain benefits, but those benefits are only as good as the experience that they're wrapped in. And so that member experience is extremely important within this cycle as well. And with that experience, the more experienced or the better the experience, the more engagement your members will likely demonstrate within the association. And engagement therefore drives value. Value therefore drives retention, because they'll likely stick around because they see the value in their investment. And with retention comes acquisition, because retention is a form of social proof. And when you've got people that are willing to stay and willing to reinvest in the association, then acquisition just becomes a little bit easier, because people see that there's value based on the existing membership. Let's move on here. So the definitions around member value, there are really two types of value. There's actual member value and there's perceived member value. So actual member value is really the real, tangible, measurable benefits that your association delivers. So this is what you actually provide. And this is regardless of whether your members even know that you provide these things or not, but this is the actual tangible value that you offer. And then the perceived member value is really how much members believe they actually receive. So this is independent of whether or not they actually use or understand the benefits. So as long as they feel as though they're getting something out of their membership, then there's value there for them. So actual member value might stem from things like the number of events you run, committee work that influences policy, hours saved through templates or services, certifications, mentorship programs, advocacy wins, discounts, tools, resources. It could be health benefits. It could be special interest groups that you've organized. It could be any of those types of actual items that you produce within the association. And these things are all operational. They're really what you deliver that provides that actual value. Now, perceived member value is really driven by things like communication, visibility of benefits, personal relevance, ease of access, first impressions, existing member stories and testimonials, and the emotional connection. And that's really the core part of this. The core part of perceived member value is really the feeling that members get when they are a part of the association. So even if you don't deliver a ton of value, or even if you deliver a ton of value, if members don't feel it, it really does not count. So perceived value is what the member believes they're getting. And quite often there's a gap between actual member value and perceived member value. So um, where we see these gaps is when maybe benefits are under-communicated. Quite often the onboarding experience can be underwhelming within an association. Maybe members don't understand what's in it for them. Value is not really tied to the outcomes that members are hoping to achieve. The experience feels outdated or disjointed, or maybe members don't see progress or recognition within the association. And this is where a lot of associations struggle. So closing this gap is really important. And I think a lot of associations just have a little bit of a challenge. And I think part of it is due to the fact that there's a priority put upon creating programs, creating benefits, and doing the physical things that they think that their members want. And sometimes communication falls by the wayside or the experience falls by the wayside. So this isn't necessarily universal across all associations, but we've seen it in a number of them. So the actual value, this is really what you deliver. The perceived value is what they feel. And renewal, which is super key, is really driven by the second one. So it's really driven by the perceived value of the existing membership. So we're going to talk a little bit about pain points. And these are the pain points from the perspective of your members. So these are 6 reasons why maybe members aren't seeing the value that you think they might be seeing. Number 1 is lack of engagement and connection. And this is the number 1 reason why members don't renew. Members often feel that their association only broadcasts updates rather than building two-way relationships or meaningful interactions. Limited opportunities for peer connection, mentorship, or contribution. These all reduce members' sense of belonging, and fragmented experiences across touchpoints makes engagement feel really disjointed. So this is sort of the number 1 reason why member value is affected and why renewals don't happen. And the second is the perceived lack of values. So members report organizations being out of touch with what's important to them. Highlighting a disconnect between benefits offered and what members actually need. Costs and low perceived value are consistently paired as the top reasons for lapsed memberships. And associations themselves identify that inability to clearly articulate their value proposition and the lack of compelling benefits as the main barriers to communicating member values. So even associations recognize that this is an issue. And a lot of it is just not being super clear internally about what these benefits actually mean to their members. So number 3 is cost sensitivity and employer support decline. So a lot of people are now being put in the position of actually paying their dues themselves. And so when they're not seeing that value come through, or maybe they're not recognizing the return on investment, then people tend to start to pull back because it's a personal expense for them. So rising dues without visible corresponding benefit improvements cause a real perceived mismatch between the investment that they're putting in and the return that they're getting. The 4th pain point is operational and communication gaps. So one-way communication and fragmented digital experiences make value difficult for members to recognize. The majority of large associations lack a formal engagement strategy, despite ranking engagement as a top priority. So poor onboarding processes mean many members never form a strong initial connection or understand benefits early on. And so this is a big problem. And I don't know if this is specific to larger associations, but because engagement is such a priority, and yet they don't have a formal strategy to deal with it. it can be a huge problem for member retention and really communicating that value proposition. Number 5 is misalignment between members and association priorities. So quite often, association professionals have different priorities, or they believe that the priorities should be one thing, whereas members feel like it should be another. So this creates friction in perceived value and leads to attrition when associations fail to reflect members' evolving needs. And then stagnant value and lack of evolution. There are few milestones or recognition moments lead to a lack of perceived progress and emotional connection for members. So static benefit offerings fail to demonstrate year-round value, which erodes loyalty and increases churn risk. So it's this idea that we really want to make sure that we're in tune with what the members are looking for, and that the organization of the association is sort of evolving with those needs and doing it in a consistent manner throughout the year, and not just at points throughout the year where they think, we're going to do these 3 or 4 different things, and that's going to really connect with them in a proper way. So part of this really does come down to sort of consistency of communication and consistency of experience. So we can see by the different pain points here, the 6 different pain points, that there are a lot of things that will contribute to a lack of engagement or a lack of desire to renew. And all of these things do contribute to the perception of value for an association member. And they primarily leave or disengage when they don't see ongoing relevance. Maybe they feel under-recognized, they perceive limited ROI, or experience fragmented communication. So these issues are reinforced by internal capacity challenges, which could include staffing, communication, clarity, et cetera, and by widening misalignment between what members value and what associations emphasize, like we spoke about earlier. And then if we look over on the association side of things, there are certain things that have risen to the top, where these are things that some associations believe, but aren't necessarily always the case. So myth number 1 is more benefits equal more value. And research repeatedly shows that value feels low, not because benefits are missing, but because benefits don't evolve, or maybe they're not communicated properly, or they feel disconnected. Excuse me. And members leave due to a lack of engagement or lack of perceived value, and not a lack of benefits. So it's a case of quality over quantity. Quantity doesn't always mean that people are going to stick around. Associations often admit that the problem is not articulating value, or is not articulating value, and it's not the number of benefits. The truth is that members want meaningful, evolving, outcome-oriented benefits, and not really more noise. Myth number 2, if members need something, they'll tell us. And I think this kind of goes with, on the business side of things, where you think, well, your customers are going to tell you when you're doing something wrong, but that's not always the case. Some members rarely articulate needs until satisfaction is dropped, and lapsed members say the association was, out of touch with what's important to us. Data blind spots and weak feedback loops are cited as causes of poor value delivery. And the truth is that you really need to actively solicit feedback and anticipate future needs. And this is something that doesn't always happen within an association. Myth number 3, I hear cost is the main reason members leave. And while price sensitivity is important, cost alone rarely drives churn. The top reason for non-renewal is lack of engagement, not cost. Members will willingly pay for strong perceived ROI, which comes, typically in the form of career progress, training, networking, and things like that. And the truth is that price really isn't the problem. It's value clarity and value realization that are the problem. Advocacy is our biggest value driver, and associations, like we mentioned before, often overestimate how much members care about advocacy. And it's not always the case, but I think that associations tend to really quite often they hang their hats on that, and it's not necessarily the thing that drives member interest. Research shows a major misalignment. Member priorities emphasize career advancement, training, and certifications far more than advocacy. And the truth is that advocacy is appreciated, but personal benefits drive value perception. And our last myth number 5, if members attend events, they're engaged. And engagement is really multidimensional. The highest correlations with retention include certification activity, volunteerism, online engagement, special interest group involvement, and frequent touch points, not just the events themselves. Members want ongoing value, not episodic value. And the truth is that event attendance is one signal, but it's not the signal of member value. Plus, how many times have you heard people say things like, I don't really want to go, but I should go. And that would imply that maybe engagement isn't as high as we think it is. So nearly all myths boil down to one reality. Member value is what members feel and not what the associations offer. And members feel value when they achieve outcomes, they feel connected, receive personalized benefits, experience growth, and see the association evolve with them. And these are reflected in the 5 value levers, or levers, depending on how you say it. We'll talk a little bit about these. So member value isn't one thing. It's a combination of different things. And we'll look at these 5 levers and how they work together. And the fact that if one of these is weak, then the entire concept of member value weakens as well. I'm not going to necessarily read through all the slide content here, but the gist of it is that the benefits are what you offer and how clearly members understand it. This is the most obvious lever, and it's the one that associations usually focus on first. It includes things like events and conferences, training, certifications, education, advocacy and representation, some tools, templates, and resources, and then discounts or exclusive offers. And again, it could include health benefits, and it could include peer groups, it could include mentorship groups and things like that. The reason that this lever can break down is that maybe benefits are outdated or underused. Members don't know what's included, and benefits are described as features and not really outcomes. And most members are looking for outcomes. They don't really care that much about the benefits. So benefits are really what you offer, but on their own, they don't guarantee value. Now, if we move on to the next lever, which is experience, this is really what or how members feel when they interact with you. And the experience is really everything that happens between the benefits. So it includes things like how easy it is to join, what the first 30 days looks like, how clear your emails and your website are, how smooth events, registration, and support feels, whether things feel modern or whether they're frustrating. And this matters because you can have great benefits and still lose members if the experience feels confusing, impersonal, clunky, outdated, and just kind of generally irrelevant. So experience is how easy, clear, and rewarding it feels like to interact with your association. The next lever is community, where members find connection, peers, and shared purpose. So community is about belonging, not broadcasting. It includes things like peer connections, special interest groups, mentorship, discussions, and shared learning, and feeling like people like me are here. And it's powerful because community turns an association from a service provider into a place members don't want to leave. And without community, engagement can drop, loyalty weakens, value feels transactional. And so community is really the value members create with each other, not just what you deliver. So it really is value, not just association provided value, but it's value that members actually find within the association themselves. The fourth lever is recognition, and this is how members feel seen, appreciated, and acknowledged. So recognition is often overlooked, but it's emotional fuel, and it includes things like acknowledging participation, celebrating milestones or achievements, highlighting contributions, leadership opportunities, and simply saying that, as an association, you notice your membership. And why this matters is because when members feel invisible, they disengage, even if they're getting benefits. Recognition reinforces belonging, pride, loyalty, and it's really how you show members that they matter. And the fifth is outcome. These are the results members achieve because of their membership. This is the most important and most under-measured lever. It includes things like career advancement, skills gained, business opportunities, problems solved, time or money saved, and influence or impact. And it's critical because members don't renew because you ran events. They renew because something changed for them. It's a transformational lever. And that's what most people strive for, is some sort of sense of transformation, especially if they're investing time and they're investing money. Outcomes are the proof that the membership is really worth it. So these levers all work together. Benefits without experience leads to frustration. Experience without outcomes, it might feel nice, but it's not really essential. Community without recognition leads to people sort of drifting away. And outcomes without communication means that value goes unnoticed. So strong member value happens when all 5 levers reinforce each other. Member value is created through what you offer, which is the benefits, how it feels, which is experience, who members connect with, which is the community, how they're acknowledged, which is recognition, and what they achieve, which is the outcomes. So all of these things combined will help to increase that level of perceived value amongst the membership and will almost guarantee that they stick around. So we're going to move on to measuring and improving value. So this is sort of the part of the webinar where we get into a little bit of tactical and strategic exercises. There's a little bit of math involved, so I apologize if you don't like math. I'm just going to take a quick drink. And we'll continue on. So we're going to look at 3 different tools today. And one is the member value index. And I'm not sure how many of you measure member value on a regular basis, or if you measure certain things and sort of, interpret that reflects member value somehow. But we're going to give you a member value index, a member value canvas, and this helps you to determine priorities moving forward. And then this member value canvas will lead into the 30-day sprint, which will help you deliver value quickly, within 4 weeks. And so if you want to start to do this at the beginning of the new year, then it's a great way to kick off sort of a new chapter in how you develop value. All right, so calculating member value. So this will measure how much value members perceive and realize from the relationship with the association. So this uses qualitative and quantitative information, and it does require you to gather that data and that information through different means. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So I apologize, it does include math and it does include research. So there is, it's not something that you can just sort of sit down at a desk and figure out. There is a little bit of work to be done. So basically it takes into account a retention score, an engagement score, your satisfaction score, perceived ROI score, and an advocacy score. And these different scores are then weighted depending on the priorities of your association. And the weights will differ depending on your particular situation, your particular association. So some people may put more of a weight on the retention side of things. Some may think that engagement is more important. So it really depends on your personal point of view. But this is a typical sort of a weighting here. So when we look at the way that we calculate this, if we look at the retention score, we look at what it's measuring, and that's the renewal rates and first-year retention. And you get this data from things like your CRM or your member database. And the way that you do this is you take your current renewal percentage and you divide it by your target percentage, and then you multiply it by 100. And we'll look at an example in the next slide, but just I'm going to go through sort of how you calculate these things first. And then the engagement score, you might get those, or sorry, this measures the depth and breadth of participation within the association from your members. And you would get this from event data, learning platforms, community analytics. So, after an event, you might send out a survey and just ask them a few questions about, how much they enjoyed it or what have you. And then we take a weighted average of activities per member. And then for the satisfaction score, this measures the member satisfaction and net promoter scores. And so we would look at getting this information from annual or post-event surveys as well. And then we would take your net promoter score and we rescale it between 0 and 100. Your perceived ROI score is how members rate the value received versus the dues paid. And so this is typically generated through member value surveys, and I'm assuming that the majority of you would be doing some sort of value surveys or member surveys throughout the year. Maybe it might just be once a year, but no harm in doing it more than once a year. And then the scoring method really is just to take the average, which is the value over cost perception, and multiply that by 100. And then we take an advocacy score, which is the likelihood to refer, testimonials, or social mentions. So this, again, could be your net promoter score, referral programs, and social listening. So this does take a little bit of work, social listening, unless you've got a system set up or you get somebody doing it for you. It is a little bit time consuming, but it's worth doing. And then we take the percentage of promoters or advocates, and then again, we multiply by this example weight. So we'll move on to the next slide and show you sort of how this is calculated. So for retention, we would take the renewal rate and the target rate, and we would figure out what that percentage is out of 100. And then we multiply it by the weight that we assign to it, and we get the weighted value. Same with engagement. We take an average, and then we work that out to a percentage out of 100, and we multiply that by our weight. Our satisfaction, we take our net promoter score, and we scale it to 100. And then again, multiply by our weight. We always multiply by the weight. And then our perceived ROI, we take that rating, and again, we scale it to a factor of 100 or out of 100. And then advocacy, it's the same sort of thing. So we take our score there and make sure it's out of 100. So everything that we do has to be a score out of 100. And then we multiply it by the weight that we assign for it, based on how we feel it's, like how important we feel it is within the association, get the weighted average. And then we add all of those up, and then that gives us our member value index. So obviously the higher that the member value index is, the higher the value that our members are perceiving. So this isn't just measuring actual value. This is really measuring the perceived value. So if we've got a value of 80 to 100, that would be considered good. If we've got a value of 60 to 80, that's okay. And if it's below 60, then there's some work to be done. And then you can look at these different scores, whether it's retention, engagement, satisfaction, et cetera, and pick out the areas that you feel are the most, are the weakest, and focus on those. So that'll provide you with your member value index. And this is something that you can then take to your board and report back to them on and say, hey, we're doing great. We've got a member value index of 90. And that just provides some confidence in the board that the association's working the way it should. So we're going to move on to the member value canvas. So this is a tool that you can use to help to identify um, some quick wins that you can then take into the next sprint, this 30-day sprint. So this is really to try to identify what your members are looking for, what it is that you provide, how you can make the experience a little bit better. And we'll go through all of this in a moment. Um, this is really best done with a team. So if you have a leadership team, you can bring them together and work all of this out amongst you. You can do it individually, but I think you'll end up missing some key points. I think it's just better to have different perspectives and different points of view when it comes to doing these types of this type of work. So it's really best to use this to diagnose one segment of your membership at a time. So within your membership, you will segment your membership however it makes sense to you. So it could be things like, we've got new members, we've got long tenure members, maybe there's special interest groups that create a different segment. So the point of this is that the member value canvas shouldn't be used to like you shouldn't put all of your members in one bucket and try to assess them all at the same time. So do this as a segmented exercise. So we want to start with members' goals and not your programs. So this is a really common mistake when using this canvas. We want to be able to ask, what is the member trying to achieve? What are they trying to achieve this year? What does success look like for them? Maybe what keeps them up at night. So we want to really try to get into the members' heads and figure out where, what's important to them. And then, excuse me, once we do this, then we can start listing our benefits and our programs and events. And we want to do this second because otherwise, if we do it first, then we make it more about us as an association versus them as the membership. So we really want to focus on where the members are coming from. We want to be brutally honest about these pain points as well. We want to make sure we're getting the best insight we possibly can. So we want to ask ourselves, like, really what frustrates our members? Where do they get stuck or where do they disengage? What feels outdated or hard to use for them? What are they complaining about, or what are they just silently ignoring? And if it feels uncomfortable for you to do this, then it means that you're doing it right, because that space of uncomfortableness is really where we see the growth and we see the value in this exercise. And then we want to score the 5 value levers individually. So again, looking at the benefits, experience, community, recognition, and outcomes, we want to be able to look at each of these items that we're putting down on paper and saying to ourselves, okay, well, how does a benefit, how do we score this in terms of the benefit that we're providing, the experience that the members are getting from this particular benefit, et cetera, et cetera. And then we want to be able to score each level or score each lever out of 1 to 5 and really ask, why did we give it this score? What evidence do we have? Where's the biggest gap between the effort and the impact? And this will help to create alignment within the group that you're working with, and it avoids opinion wars. So rather than somebody just sort of jumping in at the last minute saying, "Oh, this is this way because of this reason," you're going through a systematic approach to really get to the insights and addressing those the pain points with some real thought behind them. We want to look for value gaps and not new ideas. So this isn't an ideation tool, it's really a diagnostic tool. So we want to look at all the things that we're doing, and we want to be able to figure out whether they're worth doing. And we're not really sitting there coming up with new ideas to add to the plate. The value gaps usually look like things like a strong benefit that members don't notice, good programs with poor onboarding, engagement without recognition, outcomes not being measured or shared. Most value problems are really visibility problems, and they're not really capability problems. Then we want to translate these gaps into quick wins. So we want to be able to ask ourselves, what's the smallest change that we can make that will make this feel more valuable? So it might be things like, an email explaining how a benefit saves time, or a recognition shout out, or a clearer onboarding step, one peer connection moment. And then we run these through the effort impact matrix, which we'll go through in a moment. And then once we have these quick wins, then we can take these, we can prioritize them and say, okay, we're going to focus on these 3 top quick wins for our 30-day sprint. And what this does is over the course of 30 days, you can activate these ideas and you'll instantly start to see member value increase. So this is essentially what the matrix or the canvas looks like. It's essentially a matrix with impact up the one side and effort down the bottom. And we've broken it out into 4 quadrants. So we've got, let's say, the bottom left quadrant, nice to have, but not a priority. So these are good ideas, but they don't really have they do not meaningfully shift impact or value, can't speak, shift value or perception or renewal likelihood. So these are things that, would be fine, but they don't really move us forward at all. Up to the bottom or the top right, we've got strategic wins. And these are things that could really work well in the long term, but they might require more planning. They might require more capacity, money investment. So these are things that, would move the organization forward, but will take up a little bit more time. So these are things that we might want to plan for in the new year, but it's not things that we're going to necessarily act on right away. The things that we want to avoid or reevaluate are in the bottom right quadrant. So these are things that have high effort with low impact. These initiatives consume resources, but offer limited or unclear value to members. So we want to totally stay away from those things. So the area that we really want to focus on is the quick wins. And these are things that allow you to move fast, do it effectively. Few resources are required, both time, human resources, money resources. So these are things that, tomorrow you could probably do. Might be a bit of an exaggeration, but the idea is these are the things that you can really move forward on quickly. So to give you sort of an example of what this might look like once you start filling it out. So the nice to have, but not a priority, might be updating website visuals without improving content clarity. And this is something that we see quite a bit where people feel like they just want to dress things up and kind of give it a fresh look. But the thing is, if messaging is unclear, then giving it a new, it's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig, right? Like it's not going to move the communications forward that well. Posting more frequently on social media. Again, if you look, and there are exceptions to this, but if you look at your social media engagement, quite often it's low. And so if you don't have a really strong strategy for how you're approaching social media, posting more is not going to help you that much. And adding optional newsletter sections. Again, you're just adding more content without necessarily being clear about what you're providing. The things that you want to avoid or reevaluate are basically things that might be new benefits that nobody's requested, launching a new event type with no member demand signal, building custom tech features when really there's lots of off-the-shelf pieces that will work just as well. If we look at strategic wins, redesigning the onboarding journey, that is great, but it could be a longer term project that might take more resources. Launching a segmented learning or content pathway, again, something that takes resources. Build or revive a member community. So basically, these are all just things that are great, but they should really be thought out and they should be planned for over the long term. So we want to focus on the green section, the green quadrant, which is the quick wins. And these things could be rewriting top 5 benefits using outcome-focused language, add a personal welcome message for new members, monthly member spotlight recognition feature. Yeah, and then promoting underused benefits. So there's things that you can do now that really wouldn't take that much time or effort, and we want to prioritize those in the quick wins section. And these will all have been things that you would look at and evaluate relative to those 5 levers. And once you've evaluated them, that's when you can sort of plot them in to the matrix here, this plan. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is a 30-day sprint. This is generally what it looks like. So we've got this broken down into 4 different weeks. Each week has a different focus. And by the end of that 4-week period, you'll have executed what it is that you've prioritized from the canvas. So in week 1, excuse me, in week 1, we want to diagnose and prioritize. So this is an opportunity to understand the real value gaps. It allows us to map a member journey. So, looking at your member journey over the course of the lifetime of a member, I don't know if you've done this before, but it's a really good exercise. It allows you to determine sort of what they're looking for when they first join versus what they're looking for when they may have been with you for 20 years. And it's a good exercise to go through. I don't get into it too much here, but maybe it's something that we'll do in a future webinar or a resource. We want to gather quick feedback, and this can be done super easily with a quick survey or a little focus group or just basic conversations with members. We want to identify friction points. So this, ask them questions about where they feel there's friction, and then look at your own systems and figure out, what's taking us too long, what's taking too many resources, or what's sort of stopping the flow of things. And then we select the top 2 to 3 high impact opportunities. And then week 2, we're going to design and plan. So this is where we turn insights into action. We define clear objectives. We really do need those objectives because without objectives, we don't really know where we're going. We want to make sure that those objectives are smart objectives as well, measurable, time-bound, accountable, all of these things. We want to choose success metrics. So we need to know how we're going to measure in order to know whether we're achieving our objectives or not. We want to be able to assign owners and timelines, which kind of goes back to that whole smart objectives type of thing. And we need to start drafting communications around this. So without the communications, people will be unclear as to what the plan is. And then in week 3, we're going to implement and communicate. So we want to make this value visible. And this means that we're going to launch quick win initiatives. We're going to share updates with members, monitor early engagement and reaction. So this monitoring part is pretty key. The idea with this is that we want to be able to take action and then pivot if we need to. And if we don't kind of monitor it, then we might be missing opportunities and we might let things drag on a little bit longer than they should. And then in week 4, we're going to measure, share, and embed. So this is where we get to lock in the momentum. We want to track results. We want to capture member stories. We want to share impact internally and externally. It's really about celebrating wins at this point. It's about knowing that what we're doing is working. And we want to decide what becomes ongoing practice, because at the end of the 4 weeks, you might look back and go, oh, this was a bit harder than we thought it might be, or the members didn't really react the way we thought they might react, or didn't get the same type of uptake that we thought it might. So this is where you get to say, okay, yeah, this is something that we want to continue doing, or hey, we've given this a shot. Now we're going to move on to something else. So the idea with the 30-day sprint is not a one and done. It's not the idea that you're going to do this in January or you're going to do this in February, and then, the rest of the year you're going to continue on doing something else. This is something that you can repeat on a monthly basis. And it allows you to sort of list those quick wins, accomplish them, get them in working in practice, and then move on to some other quick wins. And the more quick wins that you compound on top of each other over the course of a year, if you think that, you've got, let's say you do 3 a month, over the course of a year, that's 36, if my math is correct. So, you'll see a massive improvement in just these little things, but they do have a compounding effect, and you'll find that over the course of a year, that value, the perceived value will increase a lot. And you might find that you change some of your programming, or you change some of the benefits that you already offer. So the more you do this, the more, I think, in tune you'll get with sort of what members are expecting and what you're offering, and you'll start to close that gap. So with these 3 tools, we will be sending out a PDF. It's not going to look like this. So there'll be action steps that you can take to to figure out the member value index, for you to work with the canvas, and then enact this 30-day sprint. So you'll have this presentation, but you'll also have some clear steps to go by as well. So over the course, and we're at about 52 minutes or 50 minutes or so I think we're on good time here. So over the course of this webinar, we've looked at getting a better understanding of actual versus perceived value, and understanding sort of where that gap might be, or why there might be a gap. We've reviewed the top member pain points. We've got a primer on value myths. We've looked at the value levers. We've figured out how to calculate the member value index, an introduction to the member value canvas, as well as a 30-day sprint canvas as well, or a 30-day sprint worksheet. So hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit more insight into member value and the differences between perceived and actual, and what you're doing versus what your members are looking for. So I'm hoping that this has provided you with some value. If you'd like, you can scan the QR code. It's got my LinkedIn information, and it's got basically all my contact information. So if you'd like to scan that, feel free to send me your information as well if you'd like. We will be sending out this recording and the tools over the next couple of days. And we're going to continue to develop tools for associations, so that you can continue focusing on member value and working to increase it over the course of the year.